Welcome, everyone. It is episode 18 already of the Writers Corner live show. On the Writers Corner live show, we connect authors to each other and we help readers find new authors to love. You probably already have your favorite type of book, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, but you never know, we may just introduce you to your new favorite genre to love or to help you discover some books that don't fit into any of the traditional genres. On the Writers Corner live show, you will meet seasoned as well as new and aspiring authors. Some of these seasoned authors will share their tips and tricks of how to get published right the first time. But here on the Writers Corner live show, you get to hear the backstories of our authors. Welcome to the show, everyone. Today is a particularly special show for the Writers Corner Live, and I'm going to bring on Mary, my co-host, straight away. Welcome, Mary. Hi.
Hi, Brigetti. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, and yourself?
Oh, wonderful. Very excited about today.
You know, every week we meet such amazing men and women, just simply amazing humans. Hearing their backstories is phenomenal. But today I feel is something extra special because we're going to meet people who have lived with loved ones who's had Alzheimer's, and it's a particularly distressing disease to have to deal with, and for carers, it is particularly hard, and especially if you are the carer to a husband, to a wife, or a mom, or a dad. It's very, very difficult. I know that you personally have experience with this as well. So I think for both of us, it's very close to our hearts. And today we've got a whole bunch of ladies that's going to be joining us. There's 6 authors who have written about their stories.
Yes.
And so what we're going to do today is, Mary, you're going to be introducing each one of them, and they're going to be telling us a little bit about their stories, isn't it? But I think what we want to let you know is we've got 6 ladies here, and we want to know a little bit about the organization that they started called AlzAuthors. So one of the ladies is going to talk a little bit about that. And because there's 6 ladies in AlzAuthors, it's going to be impossible to get their backstories or as much of it as possible because of our time constraint. Normally our show is 30 minutes, but today we're going to push it to 45 minutes because we do want to hear a little bit about them. But what we want you to know is that we're going to be inviting all these ladies back again so that we can get to hear more of the individual stories.
Yes.
Shall we dive in for today?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we are going to start with Irene. And she is Irene Olson. Her book is Requiem for the Status Quo. She is also a Black Rose writing author, just like I am. So we have the same publisher, at least for this book for her. She is going to start us off. Irene, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. And we want to let you come on and tell everyone about your organization, how it came about, what it does, where people can find it, the purpose for it. And then after you, we will go on to the next author and let you guys, Go ahead, Jean will go next. So is it okay for me to give a little bit of your, go ahead.
Jean will do the introduction to AlzAuthors.
Okay, Jean is. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, Jean. We're so glad that you're on here as well. And the other ladies are here with us. And what I'm going to do is give just a tad bit of your bio, if that's okay, and then allow you to talk. Does that sound good? You ready to go? Okay. So Jean Lee, her book is Alzheimer's Daughter. Both Jean Lee's parents were diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease on the same day. Wow, that's a big deal. She never planned to write a book, but her memoirs and experiences as a teacher and caregiver led her to her book, Alzheimer's Daughter. I love that. So I'm going to give you the floor right now so you can talk about your organization. And then if you want to throw in there a little bit about your book, and where people can find it, because we definitely want to let everybody know where they can go to find your books and get help if they want advice, comfort, all those things that go along with this is a really tough subject that we're talking about today. So can you let us know about your organization?
So both of my parents were diagnosed on the same day with Alzheimer's.
I'm
I was
sorry.
I was a teacher working full time, living very close to my parents, only a mile away. And my only sibling lived 1,000 miles away, which sounds like a recipe for disaster, yet she was my greatest support through the journey. She was willing to come and be the bad guy so that I could remain the loving caregiver. My parents were so upset by the diagnosis that once they received the diagnosis, the word was never spoken again in our family. And they did not want anyone to know. So that really gave me no support in the journey because I couldn't talk to people. I spoke with a handful of my coworkers, and they said, Jean, you should write a book about this. And I thought, I'm drowning. There's no way I can write a book about this. But after my mom died and my dad could not remember that he'd been married to her for 66 years, the journal that I'd kept to communicate with my sister, I began to think that maybe this could become a book. As an educator, I had read my way through the journey of Alzheimer's. I had voraciously sought out and read anything I could find. Early days of ebooks, and I just download one after another. One that I read was Marianne Shuko's Beautiful Blue Hydrangeas. When I started writing my book, I intended it only to be a family story and joined a local writing group. They thought it had a larger scope. They encouraged me to publish, and I published with great guilt because I felt as though I was violating my parents' privacy. I thought the book would hide in the basement of Amazon, but I sent it to Marianne Shuko, telling her that I had loved her book so much and might she take a glance at mine. She responded to me and said, Jean, this is beautiful. Could we work together to raise awareness of our books? And do you know of other authors who have written about Alzheimer's? And I mentioned Vicky Tapia, the author of Somebody Stole My Iron. So the three of us began working together primarily to see if we could post on other people's blogs about our books, caregiver blogs, Alzheimer's and dementia websites. Then in 2016, June, Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, we decided, well, we will try starting our own blog and reaching out to other authors to see if they would write the story behind their story in 500 words for us, and we would feature their articles. Now, 2.5 years later, we've grown to 6 admins, site managers, and spanning from coast to coast in the US and in Canada with our management team. And we now have over 170 authors who have eagerly joined us to give us the story behind the story of their book.
That's so wonderful. Can I ask you a question just really quick?
Please.
From my understanding, all of the books are on the website for the community.
They link straight to Amazon through our website. All are available on Amazon. And I think someone said recently to me, and I kind of had to write this down so I remembered it, AlzAuthors, we accidentally filled a niche that we didn't know existed.
That's really important.
And we all came to AlzAuthors so broken because of what we had gone through as caregivers or as our lives were touched with Alzheimer's. And we have come together to heal. And we have felt healing in one another. And we now hope that we offer that healing to others.
Sure. So what is so what is AlzAuthors, the website, what's on there for people? Say like, for me, for instance, if I wanted to go and I know I can find books there, but what kind of other nurturing help, guidance? It is a very sad place to be. It's really, really hard. I know my own personal life that it's affecting my father and my father-in-law, but they each have different kinds, and it's interesting how many different variations of the disease there are, because some people can become very calm and docile and others become very angry and violent, that's all very interesting. But what else is there on that you all offer as an outreach program? Or I'm throwing that in there, I'm sorry, it's an organization, but it is sort of outreach as well, because you are, you're there reaching out to others to comfort and help and guide and, say, hey, you're not by yourself.
Would somebody else like to answer that? Or I can.
Yeah, I'd be happy to throw something in.
Okay, sure, Anne, go right ahead.
Well, on the site, I mean, you can find a whole host of memoirs, novels, caregiving guides, books for young people.
Okay.
Along with, we have many blogs that were written specifically for Alzheimer's and dementia. We also have a page that has online links that go to important sites that people might be looking for. And our bookstore is categorized in such a way that if you're caring for a parent, if you're caring for a spouse, if you're looking for a caregiver guide, you can look in those particular areas for the books that you might need.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so Anne, I would like to, I know we had you jump in there, but I would like to, I want to tell everyone what your book is and give a little bit of your bio, if that's okay with you right now.
Sure.
Okay, so your book is Motherhood Lost and Found. That's pretty. That's a good description of it, isn't it? So
it is, yes.
Yeah. So Anne Campanella is a horsewoman. Sorry, I know I read this before. Sorry, but you're in the house too, so you're a housewoman also, right? We're going to put a spin on that. And she's a former magazine and newspaper editor. Her work is recognized internationally. Her memoir, Motherhood Lost and Found, tells the story of her mother's descent into Alzheimer's at the same time Anne was trying to become a mother and experiencing infertility. I'm sorry, I've been through that as well. It was named one of the best Alzheimer's books of all time by Book Authority in September. So this is a recent award. Congratulations. That's a really big honor. Anne was honored to be recognized as one of the most influential women in her community by the Herald Citizen for her work with Alzheimer's. I think that's amazing, and I know that you're very proud, and we really don't know the things that happen in our life, the journey that it's going to take us on. We have no idea. And it's such a blessing what each of you ladies are doing with this organization and as a group as a whole, how you will touch people's lives. We really want to get the word out there about this. So anyone who's watching, please share, if you know someone or don't know someone who has been touched by this. You may never, you never know by sharing who it's going to touch. So do you want to talk a little bit about your journey? Because I know we're trying to give everybody a few minutes, but we are going to bring each of you back on for a 30-minute segment so you can talk all you want. So
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'd be happy to share a little bit. I actually got goosebumps as you were talking about sort of my journey, because I never dreamed that I would be in this position, being able to share with so many people. When I was 33 years old, my husband and I, we moved from Houston, Texas to North Carolina. And I was hoping to start a family. My parents lived on the coast of North Carolina, so my husband and I just thought, oh, this will be great. We will be close to them. We can share our lives together. We brought our horse, who happens to be a grandson of Secretariat with us.
Oh,
Built
nice.
a farm. Yes, that was just kind of a wonderful coincidence.
Yes.
We built a farm. I was teaching horseback riding lessons, and I had been a newspaper and magazine journalist for several years. And right at the time that I was about to as I had my first miscarriage, my mother started showing signs of Alzheimer's. And at the age of 33, I was totally unprepared for this.
Sure.
All my friends were raising their families, dropping their kids off at preschool, dealing with completely different things. And I was just kind of stunned. And so I really didn't know what to do other than read and write. Like Jean had mentioned, I just scoured the internet for stories, and I wanted more than caregiving guides, and those are wonderful and important, but I really wanted somebody's personal story to uplift me and give me hope. I was an English major in college, and writing and books have always gotten me through hard times. And as a writer myself, I had written so many stories, other people's stories, and I just had a sense that this was my story to tell. And I didn't know why. I just thought, just keep journaling, keep writing about it. And it actually took me 20 years to complete the whole process of getting the story down. And I was thinking of you, Mary, because I know you have a 5-year-old and you're dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia. And my daughter was eventually born after a series of miscarriages. And so I was dealing with life on both ends of the spectrum. Life coming, which was so wonderful, with a
beginning and endings.
Yes. And I was actually doing similar things for both my daughter and my mother. I was clipping fingernails. I was feeding both of them. I was trying to understand what each one of them were saying. My mother's words were leaving, and my daughter was learning new words at the same time. And so just that dichotomy was incredibly powerful. Deep, yes. And it was a beautiful experience as much as it was a heartbreaking experience. So it was really just a gift to work on that and to capture it. I always felt like as I was writing, I was hanging on to pieces of my mother and sort of preserving some of the beauty of what she brought to my life. And I thought, maybe as my daughter gets older, she will be able to see this, and that can be woven into her life in ways that she isn't able to or wasn't able to understand at the time.
Wow, that's amazing. That's very deep. You were so young. I mean, 33 is young, to kind of, but you've done an amazing job. And I know your story, for anyone who's out there who hasn't read it, I know that it'll be very helpful and very comforting.
Thank you.
It's tough, that whole transition of seeing our parents go from these big, larger than life people to we're caring for them. I mean, my dad, and I don't want to take away because I know we can go to Irene next because I'm trying to be aware of time so everybody can talk because we're so excited to have you all on here. But my stepmother has done an amazing job with my father. I mean, just absolutely an amazing, incredible job. And it's, he's almost where he can't talk anymore, but it's been a long journey, and everyone's journey is different. And the time frame for their descent, I guess, is probably the most decent word that we can use for it. But I think every part of it is heart-wrenching for those on the outside looking in and taking care of. It's just, there's nothing easy about any of it.
Absolutely.
So would you, Miss Irene, like to be on the hot seat now?
Bring me on.
Okay. Well, I am going to introduce Miss Irene Francis Olson because I was going to introduce you before, and then, but it wasn't your time yet. So now it's your time, lady. I love your title. I love all of your titles. Requiem for the Status Quo is the title of your book. She writes from passion and experience. She was her father's caregiver during his struggle with Alzheimer's disease. She previously worked in memory care, so she was not new to the disease. Irene hopes to make a difference in the lives of others by writing novels that encourage and support those who just might need another person in their corner. Her fiction book is based on her personal experiences as her father's caregiver. And your book was published, it was not published too long ago, right? Your release date?
Right. My novel, Requiem for the Status Quo, it was published in July of 2017.
Okay, I knew it wasn't that long ago. I knew it was in this last year or so that, and I love the cover of it. It's a very, it has the rocks.
Right.
So it's almost a very mindful look, Zen.
It is. And the reason why I designed the cover that way is those are called rock cairns, and rock cairns are supposed to provide direction and guidance in a person's life. So, and that's what I hope my novel would be. My father died from Alzheimer's in October 2007, 11 years ago now. And, I was his primary go-to person. I wrote in my journal, I have all his medical records, the whole works. And I used all of that as the foundation for writing my novel. I had no desire, inclination, skill whatsoever to write a novel. But I decided that if someone else can benefit from my experience, then I'm going to write something. So I did. I think it's important to know that my novel is indeed fiction, but it's based on my reality. But it's also based on many other people I have met who were caregivers for their loved ones, one of which was my brother, who lives locally here near me. His wife was diagnosed with dementia shortly after my father died. So our story just kept going and going and going. Right. But my novel, believe it or not, even though this is one of the least funny diseases that could be found here, I try to inject humor because every AlzAuthor in the management team and the rest of the AlzAuthors would say that humor can be found amidst everything else that is not at all funny. So I injected that in there. But another important element that I wanted to make sure my novel covered is when family members do not support the family caregiver who is the primary go-to person for the person with dementia. Now, in my family, oh my goodness, I had the greatest support from my brother and my sister. That was not an issue. So anything that you see in my novel that doesn't reflect that does not reflect my real family. But what I wanted to interject in there, which I did, was that the protagonist, Colleen, her brother, Jonathan, he lives on the road of denial, which a lot of people do when confronted with a major disease such as Alzheimer's, cancer, the works. And oftentimes, because of that denial and because of the fear of the disease, another family member gives the primary person, and it would be me, although that didn't happen in my family, a really hard time and criticizes and doubts, and but while doubting and criticizing doesn't offer any support whatsoever.
No.
So I wanted to interject that with Colleen's brother, Jonathan, even though that was not my personal experience, because I do know there are so many people who are in a caregiving role who lack the support that they desperately need. And when I was an Alzheimer's Association support group facilitator, I heard those stories all the time, where they are burnt out, and no one is trying to put the fire out for them. So I wanted to make sure and put that in my novel because it is a prevalent issue for those taking care of someone with Alzheimer's within the family.
Absolutely. And my stepmother has experienced that. They live in Florida, so I live 13 hours away, and it's been hard to be able to be there. And she's gone through a lot, and she's done all the caregiver burnout. And it's somewhere along the lines, moms and parents we get caregiver burnout with our children as well, and it is a very lonely path to be on. It doesn't matter the age; it's hard, isn't it?
Yes.
But my heart, really, the passion is there for those who do the caregiving, because it's very difficult.
It
very
is
sad.
And with all the AlzAuthors that are in the group, they have had varying degrees of support or non-support, and everything they offer in their books, whether fiction or nonfiction, is such a worthwhile read. And putting a plug in, as Jean had indicated, when you go to AlzAuthors.com and click on bookstore, absolutely all of our books are there, categorized. So when you click on our cover, it goes right to Amazon, super easy for you to be able to download a book, purchase a book that might help your situation. It's a great group, and I'm the newest management team member, so I'm still living in glory land and feeling so great to be amongst the women that are also on the management team.
Oh, Irene, thank you so much for that. Thank you for your story.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for reaching out. I'm so glad we got to put this together. I can't wait to have all of you back on. And I am gonna go over to Marianne now.
Great.
Marianne, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fantastically. So where are you at?
I'm in upstate New York.
Okay, well,
Hudson Valley.
I hear your accent.
My accent's from Boston, actually.
Well, it's that area. That's that area of the country. So I don't have any accent. Yes. So your book is Blue Hydrangeas. Love blue hydrangeas, but here the rabbits and the deers eat them. So I plant them, and the buds are gone as soon as they bloom. So I don't do those or tulips anymore because they're just gone. So anyways, so Marianne is a writer who happens to be a nurse. She's a lover of words and books. She dreamt of becoming an author when she grew up, but became a nurse to avoid poverty. Okay, that's very true. She brought her two passions together and writes about the intricate lives of people struggling with health and family issues. Her debut novel, Blue Hydrangea, an Alzheimer's love story. I love it. So can you, can you give us a little bit of information about you and a vision into your life?
Sure. Well, I'm a nurse, as you said. I've been a nurse for over 20 years, and a big part of my experience was working with Alzheimer's and dementia. And I also had several aunts that had the disease. And I decided to write a book, and I decided to write it based on a couple I met in my work. And it tells the story from the male caregiver, the husband's point of view.
Okay.
Of caregiving.
Okay.
The story is based on Cape Cod, which is where the blue hydrangeas bloom beautifully, not here at my house. And in the story, it's time for him to place his wife in a facility for care because it's killing him. And they have one last journey together and then find a different alternative. So I brought in a lot of different elements of the whole Alzheimer's journey, including the son that lives far away with his own family, and the husband is reluctant to reach out to him for help, and their friends who try to be supportive as well. But Jack is the kind of guy that likes to go it alone, and I find that many men try to be stoic and support without asking for help.
Sure.
And that's pretty much a recipe for disaster. And that's what happens with Jack. at the end of the story. They have a little bit of a disaster. So,
Wow.
so my story, unlike the others, my story is not based on my parents or anything like that. My dementia story happened after I published my book. About 2 years later, my stepfather was diagnosed with 3 different kinds of dementia and
What
progressed
did he have?
rapidly.
What
He
did he
had
have?
frontotemporal lobe,
Mm-hmm.
vascular, and Alzheimer's.
Okay, and
And
my dad has. Go ahead. And he what?
he had a brain injury from birth, so he was
Oh,
already compromised. Yeah,
oh, bless his heart.
which
I'm so sorry.
made it very hard to get a diagnosis because we just thought he was being his usual jerk self. So it got pretty extreme, and my mom too was in denial, so it got pretty extreme before we finally got the diagnosis. So
Bless
his
your heart.
diagnosis on day one, first doctor visit, they recommended a memory care unit, which floored
Wow.
us because we thought,
Sure.
maybe he could take a pill and everything would
Yeah.
be okay.
Right. But
But
no.
it was devastating, and it was a very ugly situation. I hope people do not have to go through what we did
Well,
with
that's
that.
what this is about. This is about educating the public
Yes.
and enlightening the public as to these different stories, different situations, and how to advocate. All of you are advocates. We are all advocates for not only ourselves, our children, but then, sometimes you have to be that for your adult, your parent who is not able to do it for themselves. So
Right.
I appreciate you sharing your story with us and can't wait to have you back on for a full 30
Thank you.
minutes. And so I don't know if Vicki can hear us. If she can't, let's see if we can bring up Catherine. Vicki, can you hear us? Because I see her big, pretty smile, but I don't know if she's talking. So I wonder if we can bring up Catherine because we've not spoken to Catherine yet. She has, there she is. Hi, Catherine. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And I'm going to read a little bit about your bio and introduce your book. So you are Weeds in Nana's Garden and co-author for Smile for Grandpa. So yours are more children's books, right? Kind of helping children to maneuver through this, which is very difficult. I know it's been hard on my own children to see both their grandfathers going through what they're going through. And I'm amazed at how we've still done so much with my father-in-law and even my dad. And I think my experience has been the more physically active someone is in this disease, they seem to be able to hang on a little bit longer, has been, what my experience has been with it. So you are a business professional turned artist. Yay, I love art. She felt compelled to create her children's book, Weeds in Nana's Garden, following her mother's passing from dementia in 2010. During her family's journey with the disease, she noticed how much involving her 2 young children added value to the experience. So she created an engaging picture book that could reach many children to enhance their understanding. Most recently, she collaborated with author and dementia care expert Jacqueline. Is it Gannett or Jeanette? Gannett. Okay. To launch another children's book about dementia titled I Smile for Grandpa. Both of Catherine's children's books support the Alzheimer's Society of Canada with every purchase. That's wonderful. It's a very valiant thing to be connected to, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
And when I listened to Anne's story, I have heard her story before, but for some reason it really seemed similar to mine in that we were both going through losing our mothers as we had children growing up around us. Mm. And I actually got a diagnosis of my mom's frontal temporal lobe dementia right after my son was born. Mm. So he was growing up as she was progressing through the disease, and it was challenging for sure, but as other people have mentioned, I also had a lot of support in care. My dad is alive and well, and he was her primary caregiver, so I was his support wing. My 2 siblings live out of the country, so it was the 2 of us plus other amazing caregivers that we connected with But yes, so it was a very strange time, an emotional time, to have my mom decline as my children progressed. But it was really enriching, as you said in my bio, to have them with me, because I felt that having my mom and my children together made the journey better for us.
Sure.
My children were open and loving and accepting of her, non-judging, because they're little kids, and that was really helpful for us. So their perspective was really amazing for me and my dad, and also the activities that my kids enjoyed. Often it was almost coincidentally that we would discover my mom would enjoy it, because it wouldn't be something we would have naturally done with her. I think of blowing bubbles was something that you do with little 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds.
Right.
And we did it one day in my mom's garden, and my mom was just so into it and loving it and running around. And that was, I don't think we would ever have thought of doing that without having my children with me.
Oh, so, that's been wonderful.
Yeah. And so I was just like Anne and all the others, struggling so much with this decline. And I used art as my means of expression. And I did a lot of art through the process of Mom's illness about my kids and how they were helping me. And so it was actually sort of after Mom passed that I thought about the children's book. There are quite a few. Every day there's more and more kids' books. When Mom was diagnosed, there was very few kids' books, but it's something that is being addressed more and more. And it's good to have choice for kids. And, kids like to read more than one book about a subject. So that's why I created Weeds in Nana's Garden. And then I had an opportunity to create this other book with another author. This year we published I Smile for Grandpa, so that we can offer kids, if you have a grandfather who's got dementia or a grandmother, there's a different book for you, and you can relate to the books. They're different, slightly different age groups as well that we're appealing to.
That's so wonderful. I love that. And, things like this really help to teach our children compassion for others. It's a good experience for children to go through learning that very young, and then they're more tolerable and compassionate toward other situations that happen in their life. So what a blessing on kind of so many different variations. I know through the journey with my dad, my stepmother would say things and I would say, okay, so now we've got to think about him. He is a toddler at this point. And so these are things that would work really well. And it was good because I was in the middle of doing that with my son. So I was like, yes, you're just on the other end with doing the same thing that I'm doing up here, but it was good to be able to have that conversation and have that familiarity. And my hat goes off to caregivers, even in not even family member caregivers, but the caregivers who are trained, and the home health care people who come in, even to the nursing home and the facilities where our parents and family members end up. They have a very tough job and a very tough life, and it's thank goodness for them as well for going into that field and deciding that's what they're going to help with.
Yeah.
So
one other thing is that I wanted to say that, the children around us, I think, can manage more than we think they can too. We, when I was doing the book, I actually met with 2 classrooms full of 9-year-old children. And they were just phenomenal in how the ideas and how much openness they had about it and how much they wanted to learn about it. And so by helping them understand and us open to them being part of it and connecting through it, I think it's better for everyone.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so excited that you had that experience and have been able to do that. And it'll be very wonderful and interesting to see how it goes from here and how it continues to grow and how you're able to continue to affect children and others who are going through this in a really positive way. So I thank you and all the ladies on here for everything you're doing. It's really special. And for being transparent and sharing your stories, because we don't know if anyone else will be interested. And I think Irene said, sometimes it feels like betrayal to some extent, but we're not really trying to do that. We're trying to help others, So I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I know Virginie does, and I'm sure anyone else who gets to be touched by you all will. And I know we're getting Vicki. Can you hear me?
Believe it or not, I can.
Yay, Vicki's here. Okay, well, Vicki, I am going to, we are going to bring you on right now so you can talk, and I am looking for your bio right now so I can read a little bit about you. So this is Vicki. Is it Tapia?
It's Tapia.
Tapia. Okay. So her book is Somebody Stole My Iron, a family memoir of dementia. So Vicki spent over 30 years working with mothers and babies, teaching the art of breastfeeding. Oh, that's wonderful. We need people to teach that. It's not easy to do that. And to stick it out, but it's beautiful. She is a speaker and has co-written numerous lactation articles. In 2004, both her parents were diagnosed with dementia. She kept a diary documenting her family's journey. That diary morphed into Somebody Stole My Iron, a family memoir of dementia. Since then, she has contributed to various dementia caregiver blogs, including the HuffPost. Well, that's something you can go on your back, right? That's very exciting. So can you give us a little bit of insight into your life and story? And I know that we are supposed to be wrapping this up in about 3 minutes, but I want you to be able to talk. And we are going to bring everyone back on for 30 minutes. I just need to get you all booked. And then that way you can talk much longer. But I would love for you to share some of your life and story with us.
I have one sibling who is about 15 years older than I do, who lives many states away. I'm in Montana, and he's in New Mexico. So when my parents were both diagnosed with, my mom with Alzheimer's, my dad with Parkinson's-related dementia, within the same year. At first, they stayed on their own. They lived about 2 hours away from me. And within a few months, it became apparent that they were no longer going to be able to take care of themselves on their own. And my mom was not very happy about moving. I let it be her choice. Eventually, she came around and she asked to move. So at that point, we moved them in the dead of winter in Montana. But
wow.
Yeah. My mom had a strong personality, and I'm trying to say that in a kind way. It became more apparent as the disease progressed. She was combative. My father, on the other hand, everyone adored and loved because he was just a pussycat. He just smiled all the time. He was wonderful to be around. Mom made my life challenging for quite a long time. Eventually, I was able to come around and be able to meet her where she was. It was difficult for a long time. It's an interesting disease because there can be times when she acted like herself, and I would forget. And the next time I would turn around, and she would not be she would be this other person.
Right. And we have to remember that it's not them, it's the disease. And that's really, gosh, that's so hard because we don't want to believe it, and we don't want to see that change, and we don't want to acknowledge that change. And it's just so challenging, isn't it?
All I wanted was my mom back. And I looked high and low for things to read. I wanted personal caregiver experiences, not medical books about the progression. I wanted to hear what other caregivers went through. And it was back in the early 2000s, there just weren't that many books out there. So I started a diary because it was my coping mechanism. I'd come home from a day of being with them, and I'd write and write and write. And after a couple of years of this, I thought, wow, I wonder if what I've been writing, the lessons, because I did a lot of falling into ditches, making mistakes, wondering if what I had written down might be helpful to other people. So at that time, I decided maybe I could make it into a memoir, a book, which I did. And that was about 9 years in the making because I wrote, and then I thought, I can't put this out there. I can't do this and put my parents' journey out there. And so I put it away for a couple of years, and then I brought it back out. And so eventually people that I let read it that also were on the dementia journey convinced me that I should have it published. So
I'm so glad they talked you into it. Yeah, and that's really hard to say. Should I expose, what we went through personally to others?
Jean and I have commiserated about this more than once because she had that same feeling, and we feel like sisters because we almost went through so many of the same obstacles along the way. Wow. So yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad that you did. And are you still a lactation specialist?
No, I actually retired about a month before my book was before it was published, and I've written and published another book since then.
Congratulations! That's wonderful. Well,
I may have retired from lactation, but I'm certainly more busy now than I've ever been in my life. Writing and working with the joy of working with the other AlzAuthors, meeting new people all the time. New authors coming to us and just establishing relationship. It's been an amazing journey. Nothing I ever thought I would be doing. That's the serendipity of life, I believe. That who knows what's around the next corner, Alzheimer's or AlzAuthors.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think it's interesting because if we knew what was coming, we'd probably run the other way and hide.
That's true.
And just say, no, I'm not having any of that in this life. So, so we got a really nice compliment from somebody. So, for you ladies. Well, I think what we need to do is we're going to bring Brigetti back on if everybody's okay. And Vicki, truly, Brigetti and I both really want to honor each of you and schedule you to come back on for 30 minutes to hear you be able to talk about your journey in more depth, because you never know who it's going to reach, because somebody might say, oh, that's almost exactly like mine. And, like for my father-in-law is in Alzheimer's. My father himself has 3 different types of things happening for him. Which is almost, to me, it's almost, you just can't even, it's hard to comprehend that there's that much that could go on with the brain. And, but I really would love to we want to get you all back on so that we can do all of this justice that it does deserve. So.
Well, thank you so much for having us today. It was wonderful to be here.
Well, thank you so much. And here's Brigetti. She's back on, and I think she's going to kind of close us out because she's the lady who has all the controls there. So she's in charge of the starship. So
I absolutely want to agree with Mary there. It's been fantastic. I cannot believe that 45 minutes has gone by so amazingly quickly. And I can't wait to have you ladies back, because I know that there's so much more to your stories. Mm-hmm. And I think almost anyone that's watching this now wants to hear just a little bit more. So I want to thank each of you for your time, for sharing your stories in your books, and for coming to share a little bit more of your backstory here with us on the Writer's Corner Live. So I want to say thank you to Jean, thank you to Mary Ann, thank you Irene, thank you Catherine, thank you Vicki. It has been absolutely amazing. Can I ask you guys to just hang around in the lobby for a moment? So when I drop you out, don't go anywhere, okay?
Okay.
This has been an amazing show, and I want to say thank you to every one of you who has watched the show today. I want to ask you, please, to share the show, because this is something that touches most of us in our lives at some point or the other. And it's one of the most difficult things to do, because when we think of our parents, especially if they have Alzheimer's, we look to our parents to take care of us. Mm. And when that role is reversed, it is hard. It is really, really hard. And I wanted to just briefly touch on what one of the ladies said. She mentioned, for example, that often caregivers don't get the support from other members of the family. And that is really, really tough. It's hard because you almost feel like you're fighting against your family at a time when everyone should be pulling together. And that makes it especially challenging. And so we want to get the ladies back again so we can talk a little bit more about these little nuances that nobody talks about that makes it so challenging. Because there's a lot of people skim over and talk about on the surface. But we do nobody any favors when we do that. It's when we dive deep and we are honest. It's at that point that we can give other people the courage to put one foot ahead of the other, to carry on and to be the best support they can possibly be, either for a spouse or for a parent. So do you agree, Mary, today's show was very special?
It was very special. And I will say that from where my point where I stand, living so far away from my father and not being able to move there and visit enough and be able to help take care of phone calls are very important. Just reaching out and just making those calls and even just letting someone know that, you know, you are there for them. Even if you are able to help make decisions with that person who's doing the main caregiving. It's been really hard for me not being able to have more access and be able to get there on an easier, and to have that availability to be there to help out more. So that's something that's sad in my life for me. I'm very grateful for the caregivers that my father has had and that my stepmother has just really done such a stellar job. And I know this has just been unbelievably difficult for her. So I agree with you completely. I'm so grateful we've done this show, and I can't wait to have all the ladies back on and to join us again. And do you want to tell everybody who's coming on next Tuesday, who we'll have on next Tuesday?
I don't have the name with me right now, but we'll post that in the comments.
Oh, sure.
So,
okay.
We'd like to just in closing ask everyone, please can you share this, because there's so many people that needs to see the show, that needs to hear about these stories that our authors have shared with us today. So thank you so much everyone for joining us, and we'll see you back next week, same time, same place. Have a great day further, everyone. So from me in Cape Town, Bridgetti, it's goodbye for now.
Bye-bye everybody from the USA.